Welcome to the Healers Café, conversations on health and healing with Manon Bollige, a retired and deregistered naturopathic physician with 30 plus years of experience. Here you will discover engaging and informative conversations between experienced healers, covering all aspects of healing, the personal journey, the journey of the practitioner, and the amazing possibilities for our own body and spirit.
So welcome to the Healers Café. And today I have with me Amy Bondar, and she's a nutritional therapist, also a certified eating psychology coach. And her passion and focus is to help women transform their relationship with food, with body, and with themselves. So I think we're in for a very exciting and I'm going to just say sort of heartfelt reevaluation of the whole nutrition industry and our place in it, you know, as women who are looking to improve our health. So welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I guess my first question to you is what actually got you interested in this field?
You know, I grew up with a mother who was a chronic dieter and friends, very close friends who had eating disorders, one with anorexia, one with bulimia, one with just emotional eating and weight challenges. And so I was always so fascinated in the psychology behind why we struggle with food, when food is supposed to be joyous and celebratory and a significant part of our wellness and well-being and our life. I was just always so curious why people struggled. And so I knew that I wanted to help people. I never really was clear when I was younger exactly how that would look, but I did go into social work with a special interest in eating disorders, but soon realized that social work wasn't quite the path for me. And lo and behold, one day I found an ad for a nutrition school, and I said, that's it. And so I took my clinical experience from social work and my love for eating well and wanting to help others, and decided to join those together to help people transform their relationship with food, body, and self.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, how long have you been doing this now?
This year marks 20 years, Manon.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
And if you look at the 20 years, what have you seen to be, or maybe there's not one thing, right? But what could you say is the main kind of misunderstanding that people have about food or about diet or about their body? Like, what's the main obstacle to getting to what people really want?
Oh, great question. That's a deep dive in. Yeah, I think the main obstacle that people have is that for so many years we've approached nutrition for weight loss. And we really just thought about using food as a way to lose weight. And I believe that food is so much more than that, right? It's about wellness, vitality, longevity, and it could do so much for the body. But I think because there's such a pursuit for weight and such a pursuit to look a certain way, women especially have conflicted their relationship with food. Have looked at food from fad diets or counting calories or restriction, and really just looked at food on a very surface level in that way. And so I think that that's where the block is. And along that journey, what I've seen over and over again is that what we don't do is focus on the emotional reasons for why we struggle with food, for why we might have, unwanted weight or unwanted eating behaviors like binge eating or cravings or, emotional eating in general. And so I think that's the missing piece. There's always going to be a fad out there. There's always going to be the latest and greatest thing to follow, the latest and greatest nutritional information that's out there. But really what we're missing is exploring our relationship with food.
And how would you say that most people's relationship to food is? Like what's the crux of it, if you were to say what the problem with today is?
I think it's twofold. I think it's conflicted. Number one, because we have so much conflicting information and overabundance. We have just overconsumption and overabundance of information now around food. Anybody under the sun can call themselves a nutritionist, right? We're seeing so much information all over social media. Every book on the shelf has a different approach to eating. So there's so much confliction that we've forgotten really the wisdom of eating. And again, I think the second piece on that is that when we do go off our nutritional path, what we do is we quickly go into shame and guilt, right? We have good intentions. We know what we should be eating, quote unquote, but then something happens that makes us want to eat poorly or choose a food to comfort us or whatever reason we're using our food for. And what we're missing is that exploration. We go into shame and guilt about eating it and veering off our nutritional path, but we're not doing the work. We're not doing the work to resolve the stresses and conflicts so that we're not constantly repeating that pattern of going back to food.
So it's sort of like the way I'm hearing it, and obviously how I see it is that the guilt and shame is sort of the victim approach to dealing with it, because it's like if you can feel guilt and shame, it sounds like you're dealing with it because you feel bad, right? Because you're doing something wrong. And then it's like you're still the child who can do it all over again, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's such a beautiful way to put it. And what I try to teach women is how to, and men too, is how to empower their relationship with food. So instead of going into that victim of guilt and shame and blame and beating ourselves up for eating something that we shouldn't have, it's more about using it as an opportunity, using the eating moment, the unwanted eating behavior as an opportunity for growth, as an opportunity to look at the deeper dimensions in your life that aren't feeling right, that aren't, where you're maybe not living on path. Maybe where you're not living in authenticity, because every unwanted eating moment has a lesson in there for us. And that's the part we're missing out on. But if we actually get in relationship with our food and ourselves around that, then we can use it to empower ourselves and to grow and to transform.
So are you, in how you work with people, would you be telling them like, okay, here's that moment, you're in this moment where you could make the choice of guilt and blah, blah, blah. You choose not to. So then what's the process of sitting with oneself? Like are you able to simplify? I mean, I'm making all therapy seem like it's super simple, but on some level, I believe all healing is simple when you get to really understanding fundamentally what's at stake. So what is that process?
What's the process? Well, the first thing is the consciousness, right? It's the awareness. We have to have the awareness that we're actually going into an unwanted eating moment. But sometimes when we're in the stress response and we're really emotional about something and triggered by something, we often aren't even connected. We're disembodied. Right. And so that's when we typically stand in front of the pantry and binge eat, or, just take the pint of ice cream and just eat that, or whatever the food of choice is. And we're not even home, so to speak. We're not connected with ourselves. So the process that I teach my clients, and the key is to remember it's a practice. We're not always going to get it. Sometimes we are going to go into the unwanted eating moment. I do that sometimes for sure. But if we can catch ourselves, then the process is what I call ritualizing the binge. And it's not a binge for everybody, but it's ritualizing that eating experience. And so how we do that is to acknowledge that, okay, I am going to go and eat the bag of chips, for example. So it's about bringing yourself to the chips. So if they are in the pantry, it's about opening up that bag and putting it into a nice bowl, pouring in as much as you think that you're going to want to eat, but actually physically putting it in the bowl instead of just standing there eating out of the bag. And then it's sitting And it's actually taking some breaths and then sitting and eating that food consciously with the awareness.
Yeah.
Now, why that's so important is because when we do all of that practice, we're slowing our body down, we're slowing the stress response down, and we're getting present. And so we end up not overeating to the degree that we would if we were still in that triggered stress response. And then if you happen to eat those chips, then you want to taste them, you want to experience them, and then sitting with the self after you're eating them, and even taking the piece of paper out and exploring, what was the trigger here? What was the thing that irritated me, frustrated me, maddened me, saddened me to go and eat this food? And write that down. Just get super clear on what the charge was, because often we'll eat something and we're not even clear on what the charge is, right? Again, we go right into the shame and guilt, but we haven't actually sat down to reflect. And what was the charge? And then here's the significant part of the process. This is where you transform it, is where you say, okay, well, how is this challenge benefiting me? What is it here to teach me? How is it helping me to grow? If you can ask some simple quality questions like that, that is the game changer. That's where the work is.
So turning it in, it's like, I mean, it's really brilliant, because you're not at all fighting it. You're saying, okay, this is in my path. Therefore, I'm going to sit with my path and I'm going to ask the key questions. So what were the 3 key questions again?
Some of them may be, what is this challenge? What are the benefits of this challenge?
The benefits of it. Okay.
Yes.
So you would say, like, how is this benefiting me that I'm sitting here eating food?
Not benefiting you eating the food. What is the challenge that triggered you to eat the food? So let's say,
I see.
Let's say my husband really irritated me today.
Right.
You know, he didn't acknowledge or appreciate what I was doing. And so what are the benefits in that? What is that helping you to, how is that helping you to learn? How is it helping you to grow? Because it's very easy for us to go to the negative. Well, he's this, he's that. It's never like this. I wish I had something different. And that perpetuates further eating, poor eating, right? But we're trying to resolve by balancing your mind around the situation. So yes, there's negatives to whatever triggered you, but how did it serve you? How is it helping you to grow? What are you meant to learn?
Right. Right. So in other words, it's like, like a lot of cigarette smokers, they feel like they're finally taking a deep breath, right?
Yes.
And they can do that without doing anything negative to their lungs, right? But in essence, it's like, by becoming conscious of the eating of your chips, you're going, I had a need to breathe, or so I'm not able to deal with confrontation, or or I have issues with that. I need to hide, or I need time for myself. So you get to the truth of what it is you actually need.
That's true too, right? Or it's more, again, too, within the learning of like, oh, well, perhaps this is teaching me to communicate more effectively. Or perhaps this challenge is teaching me that I'm doing something that I don't really want to be doing, and I need to really go back to doing what I love. Or perhaps the challenge, so it's about what is the real trigger, and what is it trying to teach you? Because the truth is most unwanted eating moments usually have to do with not doing what you love to do, right? So you're doing everything for everybody else, like a lot of women do, putting yourself last. But it's also about not living on path, not living with purpose, not feeling fulfilled in your day. So we get resentful, we get angry, we get fatigued, and those emotions often trigger the desire for the food. So the gift in the eating moment is to learn from it, to evaluate it, to explore it, to be in relationship with it, because it's here to teach you, versus I'm going to beat myself up. I'm going to punish myself on the gym tomorrow. I got to restrict calories, and all the negative, mean things you're going to say to yourself. Where do you want to play in the game of life? Do you want to grow, or do you want to, in your word, do you want to be victim? right? It's like, no, let's grow and transform. Let's be masters of our lives by asking those quality questions.
So, and then in your experience, so you begin by sitting and asking the questions, like slowing down time so that you're actually embodied in your experience, right?
Yes.
You're mentioning how often it's like you're not even there while
yes.
So how has it played out with, no names, no, client names, obviously, but can you give examples of, like how many times it took to sit? What was the type of transformation? Like just, so to make it very real for people.
Yes. I mean, every client is different and everyone has a different journey. What I have found in the success of this is that when we work to resolve the trigger, then the unwanted eating behaviors become fewer and farther between. So for example, I've had women that see me that have binged I had one younger girl actually who was binging 6 times a day when she first started to see me, 6 times a day, and probably 3 or 4 times a week. And now, I mean, I barely see her. She barely binges anymore because we resolved the issue.
Manon Bollige here, and I want to thank you for taking actionable steps towards engaging your healing journey and helping others discover their path by watching, sharing, subscribing, and reviewing these podcasts. Every review and share helps spread the word, these different perspectives and choices and options for healing. And to thank you, I'd like to invite you to sign up to my free 7-sequence email tips on health and healing for everyday life. You can go to healerscafe.com tips. Thanks so much.
It took her time to get into the practice of sitting with self and doing it. So for probably about 6 sessions of working together, she went a whole month without binging within that time, right? So that's just one example. So it's really, the key is resolving the trigger. It's resolving the charge so that you don't continuously turn to food. Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah.
And I think the thing to remember in our relationship with food, because we have to be with it, forever. It's our longest lasting relationship, right? So to think that you'll never have a craving, that you'll never have an emotional eating moment, that you'll never eat out of stress, that you'll never eat out of, sadness or whatever it might be. I think that's the part we have to release. And I think when we do that, it lets go of the perfection that we have around food. Just remember that there will be moments when there's the unconscious, unwanted eating behaviors. But again, if we can catch ourselves that and do the work, they'll become fewer and farther between. And that's the goal. But it may not be that you'll ever be without them, right? In your entirety of life.
Right.
Yes.
And have you found that people can, because it's one of the strategies out there, but have you found it effective to once you become conscious, to switch the thing that you're craving, as in to replace, they say with coffee, use tea, or, that type of thing. Have you found that effective or not in your experience?
Well, let me answer it this way, because it's really interesting. There's a purpose for every food we crave. This is really interesting. So on a physical level, when we crave specific foods, it's because that food releases specific neurotransmitters in the brain. They release the feel-good hormones in the brain. And so we'll crave, for example, carby foods like breads and pastas and pastries because they release serotonin. So if somebody is depressed or sad, they'll often crave those foods. Whereas when we're craving more salty, crunchy foods, that's going to release more dopamine to help us handle stress because we crave more salt under stress. So it's not so much that maybe you'll replace the food to a healthier food choice. It's again about understanding why you're craving those specific foods. So if I have a client, for example, who has significant emotional eating challenges, I'm also, because I do nutrition, I'm also looking at the nutritional biochemistry. So I might use supplementation to help boost serotonin, or I might use specific strategies within the diet very naturally to help boost tryptophan, which makes serotonin, like increasing protein, for example, and making sure we're using amino acid supports and really high quality protein powder, just as an example. So when we do that, then again, the craving becomes less. The desire for that food comes less. Do we necessarily say, oh, instead of the bag of chips, I'm going to eat an apple? Sometimes that works. But again, it's more so about really getting to the root of why it's that food in particular. Right?
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes a lot more sense, you know, and then replacing within the food group might make sense.
Yeah. So if you know that chips is going to be your thing, right? It's like, well, how do we increase the quality of those chips? How do we make sure we're purchasing them with avocado oil? Or how do we buy maybe veggie chips, like a beet chip or sweet potato chip? So we can shift the quality of it. We can up level it, so to speak.
Salt.
Yes, exactly. Right. And again, it's like
olives.
Well, and you just said it, because sometimes when we crave the salty, crunchy food, it's because our adrenal glands, they're a sodium dependent gland. Our adrenals, we need sodium. And when we're dealing with a lot of stress in our day, we'll often crave those crunchy, salty foods. So it's like, how do we support the adrenals right at the get-go of the day? How do we put in adaptogens, like things like Tulsi tea and medicinal mushrooms and ashwagandha, for example, just examples, right? For how to support the adrenals so that by 3-4 o'clock, we're not going into binge fest with chips. Right. So again, it's exploring the emotional triggers, but it's also looking at our nutrition and our biochemistry to see, well, what's out of balance that's making me want these foods uncontrollably sometimes. Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's, it's very interesting what you're saying. So we were talking about salt. Can you kind of go through, you know, there's people who crave salt, that's for sure. There's obviously the people who crave sugar, right? So can you give a little bit the biochemistry of the craving?
Sure. Well, let's start with chocolate, especially because we got women listening. Chocolate's the food group on its own. So we crave chocolate physically because often our magnesium may be low. But also when we eat chocolate, it releases the same neurotransmitters as when we feel love in a relationship or we get physical connection. And so if that's lacking in your life, right, or if you're disappointed with your relationship or stressed within your relationship, you may crave chocolate. So that's an example. Interesting. Coffee is another one people often crave. We often crave coffee when we're needing a boost because we're doing mundane tasks, right? We're unfulfilled by the job that we're doing. So we need external sources like sugar or coffee specifically to give us the boost that we need to get our work done. That's another very common one that I see.
But does it have that's more a psychological connection, but does it have a biochemical connection?
It is. Well, when we're doing what we love, it releases our enkephalons and our cytokines in the brain, in the body. And so when we have that kind of activation in the brain and body, then we're satiated. Right. We're satiated by our work. But if that's missing, then it's like, okay, where's the coffee? Right. So that's a very interesting one. Wine is a very common one too. Wine, similar to the carbohydrate based foods, is a serotonin uplifter. So a lot of people who are really lacking in their serotonin and feeling more sadness, seeing life with the glass, half empty sort of approach, will typically crave serotonin for that boost, or crave the wine for that boost.
Yeah, so I guess there's white and red, like same fire.
Same. Serotonin going up, rosé, doesn't matter.
Your martinis,
Yes. Well, interesting. You said cheese. Sorry to interrupt you, but cheese releases tyrosine, and tyrosine is a very important amino acid that helps to make dopamine, I believe, as well. So sometimes when our dopamine is quite low, then it's the tyrosine that we'll crave from the cheese. Yes.
And then people who crave meat, that also could be like, there's people who really have to have their, like, everyone needs protein, but there's people
Yes.
who seem to need more. What about that or fat?
Yeah, so protein in particular, I find people who crave protein, especially animal-based protein, it's either because they're just fast metabolizers, so that protein really helps to earth and ground them. Often when we are feeling kind of scattered and just, ungrounded is the word, animal protein energetically earths us. So that's maybe why we crave that. And of course, just basic nutrients like iron and B12 and zinc, right? That might be low. And fat. Well, I think especially for women, we are a fat deficient nation, right? Especially women who grew up with the low fat diet craze for decades, right? So we often will crave fat because we're actually deficient in fat, good fats, and our fats produce our hormones. So if we're not eating fat, we're going to crave sugar, and sugar is going to keep boosting our insulin and our cortisol, and it's going to impact our estrogen. So by eating more good fat, like our olive oil and nuts and seeds and avocado and super seeds like hemp and ground flaxseed, just as examples, butter, grass-fed butter, all of that will be really helpful to increase during the day so that we're not craving the bad fats,
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting to have both angles, right? Because, like, this part comes from an expertise, but the other part is really the participation of the client, who does also an internal journey of taking charge and control of their life, so by kind of merging the two, it's easy to see results, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we're often on autopilot with food. I think that, we're not putting our seatbelt on and going for the ride. We're not getting in relationship with it, right? And there's just so many messages that our body is just so wise, whether it be through symptoms or whether it be through unwanted eating behaviors. Our body is always giving us feedback to let us know what's not balanced, to let us know maybe that one last meal we ate wasn't quite balanced enough or satiating enough. Or again, more emotionally, maybe that physical or unwanted eating behavior, the physical symptom or unwanted eating behavior was because something's not feeling right in our life. So there's always these teachings that are just available to us, but we just keep going on in our day and we don't think about it. And again, the next day we're like, oh, I'll start again on Monday, or I'll eat better tomorrow. And it's like, but you missed the opportunity to learn what you were meant to learn yesterday. So it'll keep coming back. The challenges with the food will continue to come back.
And
I think
that, that is really the previous generation, right? The expectation of women to be a certain way, and that Monday is the start of the new diet day.
It's so true. Yes.
I think I was brought up with that kind of parent as well. So it's interesting. And
that whole all or nothing mentality with food, right? That it has to be all perfect. And if it's not perfect, if you slip up once in the day, well, then you've messed it all up. But it's like, no, we have to stop that thinking and think about it in a different way, that one mess up was your opportunity for growth. It was your opportunity to teach you something. It was an opportunity to reflect and come home to yourself and really listen to what needs to be taken care of in your life. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And like you said, the body gives messages, and eventually when it's in balance, it actually starts to crave the foods it really needs.
Oh, yes.
So you might want half an avocado rather than a bag of chips, right?
Exactly. And I believe that's where the intuition comes from, right? Because when we're finally really nourishing well and nourishing with a greater purpose and intention, then our body intuitively guides us to what it really needs and desires. And the key for us is that we have to just listen to that message too.
Right. Okay, well, our time is almost up.
It's a hot topic. I know we can talk for hours on this, right?
Yeah, well, I was going to say last things, but I feel like this last part has sort of summarized, maybe do you have one more thing to really tell people about?
I just think food is meant to be enjoyed, and it's really here to give us the energy and vitality to do what we love every single day of our lives. And when we can get to the place where we're nourishing from there, then we'll forever change our relationship with food. And that's to me is the goal, and that's what I personally try to support and guide my clients to get to with their relationship with food. But along the way, there's going to be those moments, and again, we just got to take them and use them for opportunity for growth versus self-sabotage, right? And if you can start making that shift right there, you're going to start to see a difference in how you relate with food.
Well, thank you very much, Amy, for sharing your wisdom and experience, and a lot of insights for people to really, follow what you're saying. And then when this is published, there'll be a website where people can reach you if they have any further questions. And I'm sure you still take people or guide them.
Yes, absolutely. It's what I love to do. Yes.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm truly grateful.
Thank you for joining us at the Healers Café with Manon Bollige. Continue your healing journey by visiting thehealerscafe.com and her website, and discover how to listen to your body and reboot for optimal health.